Okay. Good morning. My name is Audrey Talley. I'm the agency rule liaison for the State Department of Health. Today is Wednesday, December 1st, 2021. It is 9:30 a.m. and we are in room 535 of the Oklahoma State Capitol for the purposes of a public comment hearing on proposed rulemaking by the department's Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority. This meeting was posted on the Secretary of State meetings calendar, on the agency's website, and on the department's central office building at 123 Robert S. Kerr Avenue in Oklahoma City. As noticed in those postings, anyone desiring to comment on any of the proposed rules must register at the beginning of the hearing and identify themselves, the organization they represent, if any, and the proposed rule they wish to address. If you list an organization, this indicates that you have the authority to represent the organization as its spokesperson. Time allocations for each speaker will be determined based upon the number of registered speakers. Every attempt will be made to accommodate each individual desiring to speak. Accordingly, organizations may be limited to one speaker. The only chapter on our agenda today is Chapter 681, Medical Marijuana Regulations. The Oklahoma Administrative Procedures Act requires that agencies cannot change rules that were not announced in the Notice of Rulemaking Intent. Comment on changes to rules not included in the Notice of Rulemaking Intent will be noted and forwarded to the rule contact for future considerations. Such comments may be limited if there are many desiring to speak. Okay, I will now call those registered to speak in the order in which they were registered. We typically give 2 minutes, but since we only have a couple of commenters, I think we can go 4 or 5 minutes if you have need for that time. Okay. Is Kevin Gallagher present? Kevin, do you mind coming to the podium?
You can come back here so we can hear on the microphone, and then I'll face the timer this way so you can see them.
Hi, my name is Kevin Gallagher. I'm the Director of Compliance and Regulatory Affairs for Apothecary Farms and Apothecary Extracts. We're a vertically integrated company here in Oklahoma. We have 3 storefronts and 1 processing facility and 1 cultivation facility. Really appreciate your time here. We do have a few comments and really appreciate the extra time allotment as well. Thank you. Starting on the definition of remediation, found in section 310, 681-1-4. What we see is the word remedy is too broad and does not reflect what remediation actually is. When remediation occurs, the product changes form. Decontamination is the act of removing contaminants. Remediation removes the contaminants and, again, formulates a different product. For example, if a harvest batch fails microbial testing, it is remediated by turning the raw material into a solvent-based concentrate. Therefore, the proposed definition that we have here is going to be more accurate compared to the current definition. So again, our recommendation is to strike some technical things in here again that we proposed in our draft that was submitted to OMMA. Additionally, within the definitions, when we look at strain, appearance and accompanying effects are not based in science and therefore cannot be objectively assessed. Bad actors will continue to use such loopholes to test less marijuana, thereby placing patients at risk and increasing the liability of businesses further down the supply chain, such as processors. The proposed change will ensure growers have specific strains to ensure product quality and meet public health and safety standards. Looking at the disposal of displays in section 310, 681, 5-14, Disposing samples adds further cost burdens to compliant dispensaries because they are required to utilize the services of a waste disposal facility. Marijuana and marijuana products are not dangerous to handle and can be easily disposed. This is accomplished by incorporating biodegradable substances such as soil, paper, cardboard, and other non-consumable waste to render the product unusable and unrecognizable. In fact, Oklahoma used the same waste disposal language from Colorado, who allows businesses to dispose their own waste. But Oklahoma only applies this privilege to waste disposal facilities. Furthermore, Oklahoma is the only state in the nation that does not give licensed businesses the autonomy to dispose their own medical marijuana products. This current requirement to utilize waste disposal facilities does not protect public health and safety, but merely places another regulatory and financial burden on compliant businesses who already cannot compete with the non-compliant licensed businesses within the marketplace. We know that this issue is out of OMMA's control, but would like support on this issue as we tackle this legislatively. In terms of the dispensary license label within section 310.681.71E1, all labeling changes are costly to licensed businesses, especially to dispensary licensees who historically were not required to place additional labels on products sold to patients. Alerting licensees of proposed emergency rules does not give businesses much clarity or certainty that such rules will ultimately be required. In this case, alerting dispensaries weeks in advance of a proposed change versus a concrete change does not give these businesses time to order labels, order label makers, integrate label printing in their point-of-sale systems, restructure standard operating procedures, and train employees. Compliant businesses will do anything to meet regulations. Unfortunately, such little communication and time to prepare only adds further cost burdens to compliant dispensaries who already cannot compete with non-compliant businesses. We understand and appreciate that some rulemaking must be accomplished through emergency rulemaking processes. However, we respectfully ask that future emergency rules that might impact existing inventory, like rules touching on packaging and labeling, allow for a safe harbor for compliance so that compliant businesses are able to transition to new rules over at least a 6-month period. In terms of a recall cost burden issue, this is on section 310.681.81G2. The current regulation does not hold businesses that cause the original contamination of the harvest batch or production batch financially responsible for waste fees. This places compliant businesses at risk who have undergone all testing and production requirements in accordance with rule. For example, a grower has contaminated marijuana in their field. During harvest, they do not take a representative test batch of the harvest material, then passes testing, then transfers the contaminated biomass to a processor. The processor then creates a production batch of concentrate from that biomass, tests the final concentrate product, and then it fails for pesticides. The processor, through current rule, should not be responsible for waste disposal facilities since the root cause of the contamination derived from the original grower. However, if licensees agree, they should be able to address the cost of waste disposal in contract, rather than rely on a default shifting of costs set forth in these rules. Lastly, the replacement of the Inventory Tracking System Administrator, section 310.681.97E. The rule requiring licensees to change their Inventory Tracking System Administrator is inoperable for businesses. 3 days is not enough time to find a qualified employee to place in the administrator role. If a business cannot promote or find an individual to handle the role within their company, they will be forced to hire a qualified person outside the company. The hiring process, in combination with internal company training, will take up to 30 days to find a qualified individual best suited to be the Inventory Tracking System Administrator. Seed-to-sale tracking is one of the most critical pillars to drive industry compliance in our current environment. If such a system is out of compliance, the business experiences fines, license suspensions, or revocations. Therefore, businesses must have ample time to replace their Inventory Tracking System Administrator with the best candidate to promote regulatory compliance with the system. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm certainly available for any questions.
Okay. The next speaker, Glenn Jerome. Did I pronounce that correctly? Thank you.
Morning. Appreciate everyone being here today. Far fewer people than I anticipated. I'm going to be speaking in particular on 681-4-5 subsection E to start, but I'm Glenn Geroni. I'm the Director of Operations for Premium Agriculture. We're a processor and cultivation or grower here in Oklahoma City. We do non-hazardous processing. We don't use any hydrocarbons, but we have 3 large facilities. I have 8 full-time employees. We have had 0 turnover since inception, and these rules, the proposed rules, are pretty interesting. So starting with 681-4-5 subsection E, it says, as language requiring commercial licensees use a seed-to-sale tracking system or integrate their seed-to-sale tracking system with the state's inventory tracking system. Okay. Clarifies that if a commercial licensee's seed-to-sale system does not integrate or share all required information with the state's inventory tracking system, the commercial licensee is required to ensure all required information is directly reported to the state's inventory tracking system. It's a lot of words. Metric was the OMMA approved vendor, which is, for the record, the least intuitive and least user-friendly system I've ever used of any type. It does not offer a functionality of an actual seed-to-sale whatsoever. I can't complete an invoice. As a business, I have to be able to have an invoice. Thus, I have to have a seed-to-sale. The language was changed in the rules from the words seed-to-sale to state inventory tracking system, as we've seen in multiple House and Senate bills now. So commercial licensees are actually required to use Metric as well as an additional software. Originally, I was under the impression Metric would be the end-all, be-all for us, and that's all we'd have to do to be compliant. However, the rules actually say that we would have to have 2 softwares. The Oklahoma State Department of Health official statement on efforts to minimize the cost of the rule. In summary, the proposed emergency rules were drafted with consideration and intent not to create any unnecessary or burdensome costs. The requirement of having to use 2 systems as proposed in the new rules will cost me $52,000 annually in monthly subscriptions, fees, as well as labor to keep both softwares updated and required as in the rules. I would consider $52,000 annually pretty burdensome. In addition to that, having to use Metric, we then are the only vendor for the RFID transmitters, which are non-biodegradable and are oftentimes thrown away. That's pretty expensive. So $52,000 is just a start. An excerpt from the rules impact statement found on the Oklahoma State Department of Health's website says, this is a separate item, but I appreciate the extra time. It says, however, we know that without proper regulation of commercial licensees, public health and safety will continue to be adversely affected across Oklahoma. That's the reason why we're here today, right? To implement these new rules, because apparently we're all being adversely affected. Who more than businesses and patients are being adversely affected by the current situation? The state, I believe, is prospering off the taxation of cannabis, which is a medicine. For the record, it is the only medicine in this state that we tax. Unlike pharmaceuticals that are known to be lethal and dangerous compounds, which also, for the record, don't require an RFID or a state license to acquire. The items proposed within the new rules won't impact the current situation with illegal cultivation, sales, or distribution of cannabis. People growing these things and doing these things illegally aren't following the current rules, thus they're not going to follow the new rules. There's no incentive for them. The proposed rules do nothing to help the citizens of Oklahoma, whether businesses or patients. They do, however, ensure that non-Oklahoma-based entities, Metric, will continue to prosper off the patients and businesses in our state. I would like to also address 681-7-1, the labeling and packaging. The following general labeling and packaging requirement prohibitions and exceptions shall apply to all medical marijuana products being transferred and sold to dispensary. It says, labels, packages, and containers shall not be attractive to minors and shall not contain any content that reasonably appears to target children, including toys, cartoon characters, similar images. Packages should be designed to minimize appeal to children and not depict images other than businesses. name, logo, medical marijuana producer image. It must have a label that reads, keep out of the reach of children. So a childproof container has to say, keep out of the reach of children, even though it's childproof. All medical marijuana products must be packaged in a child-resistant container at the point of sale or transferred to a patient. A patient or a patient's guardian or minor or caregiver may also transfer that. The label must contain a warning that states women should not use marijuana or medical marijuana products during pregnancy because of the risk of birth defects. I would like to know when that study was conducted. Why are we having to incur a cost as a business to put an additional label on our packages that says that women should not use this during pregnancy because of birth defects? That's fake science. There's no studies that have been conducted that would even remotely suggest that to be true. The Oklahoma uniform symbol in a manner that's prescribed by the department. So just to clarify, we have a child-resistant container that we have to keep away from children that must say keep away from children, and a uniform symbol which says not safe for kids or pets. In addition to printing and labeling bogus science statements about the potential for birth defects, this study is not real. The fact is, guys, I'll just sum it up. All these new rules are doing is going to add additional fees to businesses. It's not going to stop anybody from growing cannabis or distributing cannabis illegally because they're not following the rules to begin with. I think that we should really look a little deeper into some remedies for this to help the current situation with the illegal cannabis in Oklahoma, but by imposing new rules and costs on businesses, all you're doing is hurting us, and we're trying to survive in a very flooded market. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, is that someone else? Okay. Before we adjourn, since only 2 people spoke, I want to give anyone else in the room who wants to make comments the opportunity to make comments. So, don't feel pressured. Well, I think that means this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming. Thank you for participating in the process. Have a good day.